Hello and welcome to Recap Rewind for February 2024. I am your, again, slightly ill host, Miney. This seems to be a bit of a running pattern on these shows. And I am today joined by my wonderful colleagues in the Harry Potter Speedrunning Community, Starrlightsims, aka SLS, and Ablazeknight. Hello to you both.
What's up?
Hello.
Unfortunately, Henrik is doing other things right now. He is busy doing IRL things, how dare he. So he's not able to join us in voice, but he will be here in spirit with this little cardboard cutout that he has provided fresh for us. So thank you, Henrik, for that. But yeah, how are you both doing today?
I exist.
Yeah.
I'm still recovering from last week, as you know, Miney, but I'm feeling better than I was, so that's a positive, I guess.
I think most people know, if they've watched the recap, what you might be referring to there. And I have to say, SLS, as he is here as our guest host, the true Giga Chad recording, even when his throat was going, he was recovering from losing his voice. So big respect and appreciation to him for that. But yeah. So I think we'll get into it. Now, normally, I say normally, we've only done one episode so far, but normally, me and Henrik would read through the headlines of the month, but seeing as he's not here, do you two want to alternate between the three of us who reads the headline?
Do we have to do an impression of Henrik as we do it, or can we just do it in our own voice?
I mean, if you've proven you're pretty good with impressions, SLS. Oh, accents, so maybe you should try.
I'm good. I'm going to stick with... I like not offending entire communities of people, so I think I'll stick with English. I think I'm good.
Fair enough. All right then. So if I start,
Did you guys ban me from the document? It won't let me on.
no.
There we go.
So there
I
he is.
thought you guys banned me from the document.
Okay, I'll start, and then if we go to Blaze, and then we go to SLS.
Cool.
Okay, so the first piece of news for the recap this month, the first headline, if you will, was that Nix's Glitchless tournament dates were announced, and in fact the first Glitchless tournament, Glitchless A, has now already happened, taking place on the 16th and 17th and the 23rd and the 24th of March, and Glitchless B is taking place from the 5th to the 7th of April, which is going over the Friday through the Sunday due to scheduling reasons.
Nice. The next thing is Hogwarts Legacy related. So, Nixo becoming the second person to finish Legacy 100% and finished 5 hours behind Liam or Beaver.
Cool. Next up, we have the most competitive game in Harry Potter. We have Quidditch World Cup. We have insane percent leaderboards now for PC and GBA. Both world records are by Rusovitic. It's, I think, over 10 hours combined, if I remember correctly, which, like we said in the recap, is a bit insane. But it's called insane percent, so it works. But yeah, it's like 5 hours for GBA, 4 point something for PC or something, I think, if I remember correctly.
Sounds about right.
I think that's close enough.
Yep. Next thing on the list, Sheriff Shima puts a bounty on tutorial skip for HP1 on the PlayStation 1. Which, if you've seen the recap, you will know that both wonderful writer Nikki and our fabulous host, SLS, turn into quite the scene. And also, if you've seen this week's short as well, Pax also took that audio and turned it into something himself, which I loved, honestly. I thought he did quite a good job with it, and I had to put my edit to shame. So, thanks, Pax. But yeah, that's that one.
Next we have more HPO on PS1, which is about Fujikura. Funnily enough, I spoke to him today. Sad news, the Xbox that he got today also didn't work. It stopped working.
Aww.
Wow, that is some bad luck.
Indeed.
I'm attempting to help him outsource. But he found a 4-second cutscene skip in HP1 PS1, which is really significant due to the fact that barely anything gets found in that game anymore.
Yep. Cool. Next up, we have the first of many HP2 6th gen bits of news. We've now got two separate leaderboards. We've got the PS2 leaderboard and the Xbox GameCube leaderboard. I've sort of come to terms with my parents' divorce now. It's been a week now. I think I'm over it. Yeah, we've got two separate leaderboards now, which is exciting because I think they are now different enough that it sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Not encourages it. Facilitates having two separate leaderboards.
I gotta know. Do you get double gifts now on Christmas?
I do. However, I have to wait a while for the PS2 gifts.
Very good, very good. Speaking of 2PS2, one of the main reasons for the split was the discovery of new lag jumps and lag clips, which are only possible on 2PS2, which have completely broken that game. If it wasn't broken enough because of end day skip, it's even more broken now.
Mm-hmm. I feel like you did this order just so the fact that I would have
This
to
was
keep my own
completely not
horn.
intentional, I promise.
This was not intentional. Okay.
No,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
It was alphabetical
Uh-huh.
after me, Ablazeknight SLS.
Okay. Okay. Well, due to all of the new discoveries, I decided to get into the PS2 version, and whoop-de-doo-dah, this doggo in a hot dog bun right here got the emulator world record crown. Big congratulations to the dog in a hot dog bun. It's in all the speedrun descriptions.
Cool. Yeah, and then last bit of 6th gen news. 2Xbox Hundo went through a bit of a seismic shift in February. We changed the rules because of how the game tracks sort of what items you bought from the shop. So we made a decision that you have to buy slightly less things, which therefore sort of changed the bean routing, which moved everything around, which changed a bunch of stuff. And it then meant 100% just like went out the window. The route changed and changed and changed. Flo started running it, and then every time Flo would stream, Flo would go, "Oh, can you actually do this instead?" So I'd sit there for an hour writing out an entire new route, and then the next day he'd go, "Oh, actually, I want this instead." So there's now like my Google Drive has like 25 different routes available, including, like we said in the video, I did make it slightly cleaner for the video, but it's for God's sake, Flo, stop doing this to me. It was slightly ruder than that.
I know how the saga ended though. Someone ruined your final route.
Yes, it's
How
true.
dare they?
Yeah, so the other exciting thing, which actually we might touch on later, is that we found a way to, well, I found a way, just to big myself up a bit, to grab the Aberford's Wizards card like during the challenge rather than buying it at the end, which would change the entire route of the game. However, as Blaze lovingly pointed out, the route is rubbish and it doesn't work. So at the moment, that doesn't work, but it's a potential thing that could be cool in the future. But it's also very hard, so people probably are fairly happy it's not a thing at the moment.
Yeah, so that means the saga is Flo, the creator of routes, SOS, the one that goes crazy, and Blaze, the destroyer of the saga.
Very interesting saga of characters there. Speaking of that, PAX, we had wrote a very emotional letter to Mr. Nixoman regarding his world record of fixed movement 80% being stolen frivolously by Nixo. Nixo blames it on the wheel, whatever that means, but yeah, Pax wrote a very emotional letter, and it was underscored beautifully by the amazing SLS with a small rendition of "All by Himself" or "All by Myself." A
Now
cover.
Pax will be
which was brilliant. And I have to say, that was completely improv by SLS. No, me and Nikki suggested it, had that idea, but SLS was like, I've got a crazy idea, let me just do it. And he did it, and it was great.
Hopefully people enjoyed it.
That was funny. Somehow this year we cannot go a month without fucking Lowcast. I had to say it. Why do we keep getting Lowcast? We even have one in March.
Because I can't. I can't in Ratburn.
We cannot go a single month now without Lowcast. We can't. But in February, okay, Lowcast cast skips went down to 78. The world record is not at 78, it's at 79. Akan, please just get it optimized.
Have you seen that skip? Have you seen how difficult it is?
Yeah, but we just gotta get the Lowcast down to 78, so then it will be like, oh my god, the route is optimized now. Surely nothing will change. And then Akon and Ratburn are just like, hey, guess what? I found this weird casket that if you do boosting for 7 minutes straight and you like watch Family Guy clips and then you like play in mobile percent, well, you get to skip a gargoyle cast. I can't believe it. And then they stall for 2 weeks, and then they finally get it, and then they're like, I can't wait for this to be optimized again. And then they find something else. They just can't stop.
I love watch Family Guy clips. That made me laugh.
Cool, and finish you off one PC, I guess. I'll finish it off. High jump has gone below the 80% time, which is exciting. I remember back in like 2014 when super jump only percent was like a huge thing, 2014, 2015. So it's cool that it's sort of come full circle and we're back to like having really massive jumps just to look funny and cool, basically. But it's interesting that there's some cool strats in there that you wouldn't really think would be a thing, I guess.
Agreed. Very much agreed. Moving around then as we operate to the Chamber of Secrets. But no, actually, you can't operate inside Hogwarts. Actually, no. So, Human achieves the 80% world record by 1 whole second. Very impressive. Oh, sorry, Bill achieves the record.
I think you mean U0001.
Yeah, or...
You mean U_0001?
Yeah,
sorry.
we say the underscores on this channel, so that's...
I'm so sorry. U_0001.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Paul cannot escape the recap, can he?
No, he literally cannot. Even in like June last year, one of the quietest months we've ever had, he was still in it.
Well, can you like stop being influential and just actually start moving your furniture?
Wow. And finally, speaking of flow,
Blaze, this is you.
You're up.
Yeah, I had to wait for the dramatic pause, okay?
I'm so sorry.
You ruined it. Anyway, Flo decidingly that he wanted to be in the recap again, even though he didn't ask me for permission, sadly. He got all requirements world record and jumpless world record, and then after that he got 3 PCNE, which will probably be covered.
Yeah, Nikki wrote about that, but I think it happened after our sort of production cut off, so it didn't get put on the notes, but yeah, it was also covered in the recap towards the very end there. But yeah, now in terms of our credits from last month's recap, we had the wonderful SLS providing his wonderful voice to be our host and also providing some script support to do with the 2/6 gen stuff. We had Nikki writing the script as ever. We had, or will have, I should say, closed captions provided by Winter. Winter has been very busy, so she will get around to them when she can, which is I completely understand, and I, as ever, appreciate Winter for doing the subtitles by herself for free every month as a favour, and also as a thank you for as a sort of a give back to the community. So yeah, letter writer of course was the one from Mr. Paxalinsky. Editor was MineyCart, and gameplay footage, the only gameplay footage besides footage that I've taken, which I don't credit myself for gameplay footage because, you know. But the only gameplay footage that was used was one PS1 gameplay footage by Flow203. So, big thank you to everyone as ever that helps make these recaps possible, and the team is ever growing. Actually, there is some exciting news which we can sort of, I guess, officially announce that Mr. Starrlightsims is now officially a part of the team, joining the writing department.
Ooh.
The way you said that made it sound like you're like, wait, what am I? It's like, yes.
Wait, when were you planning on telling me, Miney?
We talked about this on Friday.
And
I don't
there's
remember
stuff
this.
to help with the recap now because there's now recap informers.
I quit. I'm sorry. I'm going. Bye.
SLS already quit.
This
Yeah.
is true as well.
I get your paycheck, Dan.
You can have my
You guys
desk.
are getting
Fine, take
paid.
it.
Yeah, it is worth mentioning because Blaze brought it up. We now also have recap informers. We have an informer for PC, which is Portal. We have an informer for 6th Gen, which is Blaze. An informer for handheld, which is SLS. And an informer for Legacy, which is Skiller. We don't currently have an informer for PS1. But to be honest, the PS1 community has been kind of quiet. And we can probably manage just to keep an eye between the rest of us. But if anyone...
They're in preschool right now. They're having their nappy time.
What?
Okay, Mr. Bendy.
Yeah, true. True. But yeah, if anyone is interested in helping out with PS1 stuff, by all means do reach out to me. We're also in the process of sort of looking for some other stuff, but there'll be more information on that in next month's recap. Anyway, moving on to stories that deserve some more love this month, and this is the opportunity where I take a moment to sort of acknowledge any potential mistakes we may have made, make any corrections, any acknowledgements, etc., before we get into that list of stories that may deserve more love. And I have one small note from Vlad regarding his section of his interview. He tells me that a sub 1 is more tasks for now in terms of one high jump. Unless something is found. Talking about human capability as in, like, non-TAS and not the runner human, is a 102 or 101 could be done with perfect, but not as a TAS run. So, just to clarify that, because I think there was a small misconstruction in the question, and also I think the way I edited it. So, probably my bad as more than Vlad's, but just to reiterate that, because Vlad let me know, like, as soon as the recap dropped, and I appreciate that, there was your small correction. So, stories that deserve more love this month. I'm going to start with our guests this month, I think. Blaze, what is a story that you think deserves more love this month?
Anything 2PS2 related. I was so involved with the 2PS2 stuff. It was insane, and plus SLS is still kind of sad because I'm the reason that his parents got a divorce.
That's fine. I saw it coming.
I was the divorce lawyer.
I mean, if anything, it's somewhat funny because we voted on your parents having a divorce.
To be honest, it's probably the safest way of doing it.
It's a vote. That's how all divorces should go. It's just a vote.
A Discord community vote. Yes, I think that Discord members are the best people to be signing that sort of thing.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
true.
definitely. But I do agree in a sense that, like, 2PS2, and we are going to get onto this and we're going to talk in depth about not just 2PS2 but 6th Gen as a whole, because that really has been the dominating story of this month. But I do think it's sort of worth mentioning, like you say, that 2PS2 has been, the amount of stuff, particularly SLS has found, is kind of crazy. But yeah, SLS, what is your story that deserves more love this month?
Okay. I'm gonna again be a bit selfish here. Um, it wasn't actually mentioned in the recap, and I don't know whether it'll because technically it was found in February, but that it's the new skip in two Xbox to skip Morgan and Burks.
That skip is so cool.
It's a really cool skip. Because that clip has been known for like years, but to now actually have a way of using it to save like 40 seconds in a run is really cool. It's actually I think it's more than that. It's like 45 to 50.
I remember that too. Like we were all in a VC, and then you just started playing around with the clip, and then you're like, "Oh, I did something."
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
I was
hold on.
So I was gonna say I was messing around and then I found a ridiculously hard way of doing it, and then I sort of went, "Oh, actually, all of this is stupid. I'm just gonna do it this way," and then it became almost free.
Yeah, I think this is one of the reasons why I'm very keen to have informers for the show, because stuff that really shouldn't be missed. In fact, I was in the VC when you found this.
Yeah.
You know, like, so yeah, it's part of the reason why we're taking steps to ensure that we don't miss stuff. And I guess it's something to worth mentioning here that for those who didn't see it, PAX did last month a recapped, which is essentially like a quick, like 60-second breakdown of that month's recap. And then obviously we now have Recap Rewind. So in a sense, there are three different lengths of recap. You've got your short form, your medium, which is the short, obviously, the medium form, which is the actual recap itself, and long form, which is this podcast. So there's like various different ways you can listen to this tweet or like enjoy the recap now, which I think is really cool. But yeah, in terms of my like story that deserves more love, honestly, I'm not too sure. I think there's been some good grinds this month. I think if I'm recalling correctly, Portal has really been on an Omega glitchless grind. Like he's now second on the leaderboard, which is insane. Is he not?
No, he's third now, isn't he?
He's third because Human got a 45.02.
Yeah.
That is true, yeah. But up until very recently, he was second, which is insane, honestly. Paul is a runner that I've always admired for his sheer dedication. He reminds me a lot of you, Blazin, when he really gets into a grind, in that he grinds and he grinds and he grinds. Like he will just keep going and going and going. And as someone who runs Chungus a lot, like you need in that category, you know, the smallest of optimizations, I do feel like you really need that with something like that. So I think that probably comes from something like that as well.
All I know is that one frog in Defendo is gonna be put on a bounty. Dead. Wanted dead. And everyone hates that frog.
I love the little poster that Flo made, which he showed in the tournament. That poster was great.
If I was playing in that tournament and I got to the cutscene where you just sit around and do nothing, right? Like the flashback, I would have put up text and said, "I ate the frog."
No, but frogs are friends, not food, Blaze.
It tasted real nice.
Dun dun dun. Okay, so unless anyone else has any other stories that deserve more love this month, I think
I guess the other thing I was going to bring up actually, 'cause talking about grinding out categories, would be, and it sort of links into the next topic anyway, would be the sort of face-off between Flo and Jesse for the 2 Xbox Hundo record. Because it was basically like Flo would do a run and get just off world record, then Jesse would improve the world record, and then Flo would get just off that new run, and then Jesse would improve that run. And it took me screwing up the route for Jesse for Flo to get world record.
Literal math lost him a minute and a half.
Shaking my
I
head.
feel so bad. Yeah, so I lost Jesse world record.
That run,
away.
fun fact, if Jesse didn't lose a minute and a half to SLS's poor math, would have had a mid 304, and the current raw record that Flo has is a mid 305, so it would have been record by a minute.
Yeah. So I literally gave Flo world record.
Shaking my head. Anyway, speaking of 2/6 Gen, seems like the perfect opportunity to dive in to it. And I think we'll start with 2 Xbox, seeing as I think that happened first. Plus, I think it's definitely the shorter of the two to talk about. So, 2 Xbox. Talk to me, Celeste, I guess, about the journey to the rule change.
Yeah. So how 2 Xbox works is it has a, like all the 6 gen games, it has a Fred and George's shop in the common room. And how they coded it was that it's only there during nighttime. The only time it's there on a daytime app is the final day. But rather than add a check to be like, oh, actually, you've already bought, for example, the Alohomora spell, they just made it buyable on both. So the discussion came up about like the things like the Luminous Balloon upgrades. You can technically buy them twice, but because is that like in 100%, should we be buying both of them? Should we just have to buy one? So it sort of was put to a vote, and the consensus was that only need to buy one of each because it seems like the second one is just like a sort of like a backup programming miss as opposed to an actual stylistic game choice. So it meant that we no longer had to buy 3 extra upgrades, which was like 60 beans. So it then meant that we could sort of spread the beans elsewhere, basically, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. So then, how did that origin? I guess no. Where did your brain immediately go with possible reroutes following that change?
Directly following the change, I wasn't really thinking about the category too much. So it was sort of more just like, oh, we can just cut down the farming at the end. But around the same time, Flo was picking up the game. I think Flo had already done a couple of runs before that vote went through anyway. And then obviously I was, because 2 Xbox is the love of my life. Love you, 2 Xbox. I would obviously watch Flo run it, and it sort of would just come up in conversation of like, oh, actually, could we move this earlier? Because for anyone who doesn't know 2 Xbox very well, there are lots of mini games in 2 Xbox that you have to complete to get cards. And one of them is gnome tossing, which requires you to throw gnomes through rings to get points. However, the rings in 2 Xbox are completely RNG in terms of the distance they are away from you, where they are spinning, where they're rotating, the speed they go, all this stupid stuff. So it meant that if you failed one of those, you're spending beans on it, so you lose the beans, and then you have to do it again. So Flo wanted to move all of those as early as possible, basically. So it took a lot of different reroutes and different moving things around. And as you've seen, there was a new, for God's sake, Flow routes to sort of get that to a place where it is now.
Very interesting. Blaze, I'm gonna come to you here. I feel like you are someone, at least before this month, that isn't really someone who does much to 6 gen. Like, you're very big in 1 and 3, but 2, you never seem to really dip your feet into that much. Is there any particular reason why of that? And did some stuff like this make you? I mean, obviously for 2PS2, it clearly made you want to give it a go. But with this rule change, would you consider maybe doing 2 Xbox under?
If Aragog can give me 4 bellies in a row, maybe I'll consider. But the RNG in that category is awful. In all categories, it is so bad. There needs to be some sort of RNG manip, at least for any percent. It keeps going. You have Quidditch. Then you have Aragog, where you could have the run of your life. You enter Aragog, thinking he's going to give you a nice little softball. But then he just throws you a 105-mile-per-hour ball and just never belly dances for the rest of his life. He retired from belly dancing and just wanders around and just does stomp attacks and charges at you for 4 minutes straight as you cry and watches your 3-minute lead turns into a +5.
Yep.
Yeah, I have heard a lot about how 2 Xbox is quite RNG heavy. Maybe another reason why 2PS2 is the better version, right, SLS?
I refuse to comment.
No
I will
comment for you,
say,
it is.
I will say I really enjoyed editing the recap because SLS at first straight off he gave me like multiple takes of every single like section that he recorded, which was great, and included the bloopers, which is also amazing. But also particularly the bit where he gets mad at me for making it more Actually, now I think about it, it's weird. Why were you getting mad at me when Nikki wrote the script?
I mean, that requires thinking too much into the entire process. I mean, I just went, oh, well, Miney is the person who's going to be editing and also the person in charge, so it probably makes more sense to just say, as the head of the organization, Miney.
Yeah, that's true. I still feel like whenever a lot of people talk about the recap and stuff, and they're like, "Buy Miney," and I'm like, "Yeah, but there's also all these other people that work on it now. It's far from a single person project anymore." And it's definitely something I'm trying to make more clear to people that this project is not just me anymore. It's not been just me for a long time. Because obviously originally from about April or March, Winter came on board, April Blaze came on board, and then from like November, Henrik and Nikki came on board. Now SLS is on board, Portal, Skillet, all these people are now working on this project. It's not. It feels weird to call it my project. Like, yeah, I'm leading it, but it's not by me. It's by us, the group. Founded by me, sure, but not when people say by Miney, it always sorts of hits weirdly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's like a sort of with any business or company, you have the person who's the figurehead, who's like the person who is the visible leader. I mean, like with lots of like things like your Facebooks and your X's and whatever, which feels really stupid to call it X. You have people who are like the figureheads who probably don't do a lot to them on the back end, but people recognize as the person who, if you are like, oh, who is this? Who is in charge of this thing? They probably say, oh, it's this person. Whereas actually, they probably don't do that much. I guess not saying you don't do that much, Mike.
Oh, thanks.
Just to clarify.
That's the person
Miney,
who basically
you just sit
manages
back and
the
do nothing.
entire post-production process, and like does a lot of the pre-production as well.
Yeah, but how
Thanks.
hard is that?
Oh, wow. I will have you know, for the January recap, I broke my sleeping pattern editing it. I was up till 4 a.m. editing that recap in January. That's how hard it is. No, but hopefully soon we should have some editing support, which would be great. But yeah, to sort of bring you back to 6th Gen then. Obviously there was a lot of reroutes. What you I guess as we sort of touched on it, what sort of went wrong with the route that Blaze managed to find the massive flaw in?
It's so how the route works at the moment is that because we skip all of our fours, there is a card in our fours. But if you don't grab it in our fours, you can buy it in the shop at the end of the game. I found a way to still do Avafor's skip, but also grab the card in the process. The issue with the route is that it requires you doing a death warp. But to do that, you have to take damage, but you also need to have beans at that point. And if you're grinding out for beans, anytime you take damage when you have beans, you lose 5 beans. So you end up not having enough beans to then do any of your minigame stuff. So it's like a trade-off for like how do you take damage without losing beans and where do you grind down for the beans, and it becomes very complicated. And also if you can't like grind for beans before you go in with low health, because if you have low health, the bean like the jars and chests and stuff you get beans from will drop health drops as well. So you'll just go back up to full health anyway. So it becomes like it's a very complicated thing of like if we can find a way to die without taking damage, it would probably save time. But at the moment, because we have to take damage to get our health down to die, it doesn't save time.
I'm sorry, I'm just thinking about that last sentence, sort of out of context. If we can find a way to die without taking damage, then I'll be alright.
Yeah.
Painless death. The big part of the route was right after restricted because the what SLS forgot is you had to farm after restricted to get, what was it, Wiggenweld, to get a potion vial.
Yeah.
And since, when, like you said, once you go in, it'll just keep giving you pasties. The low health that you got from the restricted section, you immediately lose by bean farming. And then I was like, what if you move it? And then you can't.
You guess I could, in theory, I guess you could move it to after. I'd have to check the route, but you could move it to after Avaphors. But then I'm trying to think why that wasn't a thing that would work. Why wouldn't that work? That might work actually.
Oh, live rerouting on stream. You
I'll
heard
check
it
them
here
out
first,
later.
chat.
There
We
was
could
some
have a
reason why you couldn't.
new route coming your way soon.
There was some reason why you couldn't move it though.
Yeah, I was like, I'm sure there was something, but off the top of my head, I can't think what the reason was. But I'm sure there's a reason for it. I'd have to try and find the route somewhere.
Because you would have potion vials 100.
Yeah, let me.
It'd be really hard to move that.
Where are we? Expelliarmus restricted, Avaphors. Oh, I remember what it was. It was because it wasn't to do the bean farm, it's to do with the taking damage part. Yeah.
Okay.
So you could go and farm for beans after Avaphors, but you'd to take at that point, because also you'd have grabbed cards on the way, so you'd have more health than you usually would. To get your health down enough that you would die quick enough, you would end up losing a bunch of time trying to kill yourself, basically.
Okay. I was gonna say, never mind. Recap Rewind. Welcome to Recap Reroute. Welcome to Recap Rerouted.
Good one.
There we go.
It would depend. My thing is, right, like when you get 10 cards, it doesn't heal you, right? It just gives you.
No, it just extends your health.
Couldn't you, like, in theory, just take damage throughout the whole run?
No, because anytime you bean farm, you'd go back up to full health.
That's fair. When's the last time you bean farm in the before the restricted?
I think it's just before that.
So
you Expelliarmus Day, you'd bean farm up to 100 for the mini games, and then you also go to the shop at that point as well to buy 2 cards.
So why does bean farming give you full health?
It gives you pasties when you start hitting the beans.
And it
would just keep giving to you.
Yeah, the things you farm on, they drop. You could technically not grab the pasties, but that becomes an absolute nightmare of like trying to avoid the pasties whilst farming.
Right, I see. So it's like picking a needle out of a haystack kind of thing.
Yeah, it would be like if the pasty fall. If one, you could get really unlucky and just have constant pasties. But also, if the pasty falls on top of a bean, you've lost out on a bean, and that's 2 casts you've missed out on. It becomes like at that point you wouldn't be saving any time.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's a dumb route.
Yeah, technically it probably would work if you could find a way of getting damage down quick enough, which you can. Technically, you can do Kitty out of bounds and grab some cards and take some full damage, and then you take some full damage in Avaphors, but you'd have to find enough things to hit you that would take you down 2-0 by the time you get to the point where you're getting the card.
And or find a way to bean farm without getting past the broom racing thing.
So I was actually looking at that. For anyone listening who doesn't know, technically what you can do in 2Xbox is if you are outside and you go into Madam Hooch's broom lesson place, and you take out your broom while you're going through the loading zone, the game doesn't update properly. So what happens is when you then retake the flying lesson, all the rings there will give you beans. So technically what you could do is you could go to the Madam Hooch lesson, do the flying lesson for like, a minute 45, and get up to 100 beans. However, it's so RNG random dependent that you would never get it in an RTA run ever.
Because it's dependent on, because sometimes all the rings will spawn, sometimes only like 3 spawn. It's like,
more RNG. Great.
what were you testing with it?
Or was I testing with it?
Yeah, you said you were testing it.
I was trying to see if there was a way of, because also another thing you can really stupidly do, outside into Xbox, there's a bunch of rings that if you fly through, they give you beans. But because they take a while to fade out, what you can do is if you fly through a ring and then turn around and fly back through it quick enough, it can trigger twice, which doesn't give you double the beans. Or it might do, actually. I can't remember. But what it does do is it spawns 2 new rings rather than 1 new ring. So you can technically just fill the sky up with rings. I was trying to see whether doing things or like having rings in certain places would affect how the rings spawn in the flying lesson, but it doesn't seem to have any correlation, unfortunately.
Could you pause buffer through the rings outside to get like a bunch of them to spawn? Like pause buffer so you can go through multiple times?
I don't think so, because I think if it's going off pause buffering in other places, I think it just keeps the state and delays it rather than like finishing the state.
Okay.
It's not like one Xbox where you cast a spell and it holds the spell until you've unpaused.
All right. We've talked a lot of, I think, a lot of doo-doo about this game. Well, Blaze certainly did. So I'm going to ask SLS now, as we start bringing the Xbox section of this to a close. Why should people run to Xbox?
Oh, that's a great question. I think if you're not going for world record, I think to Xbox is actually quite a fun run. I think it has some cool skips. It has a lot of skips that have sort of easier versions, harder versions, good setups. There's a lot of downtime to look at routes, look at different things. You have cutscenes that you can sit through. None of them are super. There's a couple that are quite long. Majority of them aren't too long. It's a fun run. It's fun to optimize. You feel. I don't know if other people do, but personally, I think it feels really fun when you nail things like Aberforth skip. I think it's a really fun run. Obviously, as someone who's run it since 2014, which makes me feel very old. It's I think for like having fun and just relaxing and just having a enjoyable run where you're not having to worry about like 2 frame time saves from cutting a corner or whatever. I think it's just nice.
Yeah, that seems like a fair reason. Alright then, moving on to PS2.
The better
Um,
version.
Oh, I'm glad
No.
somebody here agrees with me. So yeah, to
I'll just go now.
PS2.
It's fine.
A lot of stuff got found this month, starting really with JP, actually from sort of a casual player, I think from Nix's community. Originally finding the sort of lag clip on the staircase, I believe, which then got dug into more by MineyCart, which then ended up becoming a full-fledged thing, which SLS you completely took to town with. So I guess the question is, how does it feel when you see, I guess to both of you, obviously I haven't played this game and run this game for a while now, how does it feel, or been aware of this game, I should say, how does it feel when you see something like this, with a new tech like this with such really infinite possibility?
Yeah, Blade, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first because, like, when I saw the tech, I was like, "Oh, finally," because it's just like, uh, because I knew that game was gonna get broken eventually, but end day skip ruined the chances of that happening, because then 2PS2 became the talk of the town, and it turned into what 1 GBA and 5 GBA are, which is, I make fun of them for multi-runs, the game is saved, blah blah blah, and they never touch any other category, therefore, because it doesn't matter for any other category, right? Like 2PS2 especially, because in any other multi-run, like no major skips or 100%, right? You would run the Xbox version. So therefore, there would be no reason to optimize any of the other categories or even look into any of them. So it just remained dormant because it was just like, well, and day skip exists, so we don't need to look. It was finally like, oh my god, they're gonna actually look into like no in day skip stuff. Obviously, any percent was gonna become the priority, and I knew there was gonna be a bunch of any percent stuff that got found, or just like some of the first stuff that SLS found, and then once I saw some any percent no in day skip stuff, I was like, finally. That was my reaction.
Yeah, I think again, as the person who actually had the first world record in 2PS2, which is crazy, was it a 342 or something? It's sort of like it's really cool to see new stuff found, and at the same time, it's sad in a way when there's such a long time between things being found. Because if we ignore end day skip, you get to a point where someone does a run and it's like a really solid run, and you get to know that run really well, and then suddenly within the course of like a couple of days, it becomes completely obsolete by several minutes. So it's like that sort of, for me, it's that trade-off of like, it's really cool that there's new stuff being found and the game's being progressed. At the same time, it's a bit like 3GBA with RNG Minute. Like, it's really cool that that run was there for as long as it was, but it's also really cool that the new stuff's being found. So it's that trade-off of like, I love the new stuff, but also feel sad that that run is now no longer sort of the go-to run for what is optimal in the game.
I mean, that's fair. Sort of, backing off of that, obviously, SLS, you are a bit of a handheld connoisseur as well as 6th gen. And I know we've talked about this amongst ourselves, but I'm curious how it applies here. We sort of spoken before about the categories like Blaze mentioned, 1GBA, 5GBA, and then versus that to 1GBC when A strats got found, which was different because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, 1 and 5GBA hadn't really been tapped into too much, and then they got this massive like game breaking, or not as much as 1GBC had.
I think if you look at what the time of the world record was, no, they weren't as optimized as 1GBC. But I think in terms of 1GBA, I'm turning very posh here for a second. 1GBA very famously has a really, really strong task that came out in like 2014 that had a bunch of really cool stuff in it. So I think, although obviously since then Cosmic's found some stuff, I found some stuff, Liam found some stuff, I think that that game had been dug into quite well. And I think that 1GBA and 1GBC are very similar, and then 5GBA and 2PS2 are probably very similar, where, although in different ways, but they both sort of had a lot of untapped potential that wasn't really looked into because no one ran the games. It's like 2PS2 was just Mike, really. And Mike got the category down really low and like did a really good job with that run. But obviously, if you're just one person looking at a game, you're sort of missing out on a lot of stuff. So it's weird that they like all these games have the same sort of journey of like having a long history of having like just going down little by little, and then suddenly it's like being knocked down by an hour. But I think they're all very different as well.
It is. It kind of seems to be the sort of HP speedrunning tradition. And I suppose probably speedrunning traditions as like a whole. That like a lot of games get like massive time saves. Like you just look at free PC that didn't have requirement skip for so long, and then that saved what, like 20 minutes after the end of that run. I want to say
25.
25. Like that. Like it seems to be this habit of we find like. I mean, I wouldn't say requirement skip is in the same boat as end day skip, save corruption, and wrong warping and ace strats, because I think it's not quite. I think the difference for me with those ones is you start from quite early on in the game and then skip a lot of content, whereas with requirement skip, you're basically just skipping, doing a bunch of pointless shit, essentially. The devs were like, we want you to do this.
And from what I got from the Talk of the Town, because I looked at older videos, because I needed to do that for like insider prep and stuff like that. A lot of people were talking about how this didn't feel like a huge find, because better any percent already existed.
Yeah.
So it was literally just Benny, but you jump at the end.
And now Benny doesn't even exist anymore. Actually, funny story. When Legacy first got its boards, and people were talking about like the categories and sort of any percent versus Kill Ranrock, I jokingly threw out the suggestion of Benny or better any percent for Kill Ranrock, but then we were like, only a few people are gonna get that joke, but the thought was there. But one thing I can say, actually, speaking of Legacy, I'm fairly certain it's thanks to me that the Legacy category extensions game has the upside down icon like the regular one does. Because I think me and Nixo were talking about like what the icon should be, or like it came up in conversation. And I said, well, it's got to be the upside down of the Legacy logo or cover, and lo and behold, but that's what it ended up being. Anyway, enough tooting my own horn. I guess then let's sort of, without going into too much detail, let's sort of go through and sort of what's changed with your with the entire game. If we look at like an any percent no end day skip run, what can we now skip? Thanks to the new finds that you and others have found. SLS.
I mean, Blaze, if you've got world records, so go for it.
I'm the only one. I'm the only one that did a completed run.
Go on then, Blaze.
All right, I'll start with like stuff that you can do in any percent that can also be done in any percent no end day skip, which is you go, you start, you do burrows normal, then you do Borgin and Brook skip, which that trick is hard. It is so dumb. It is so it's not as dumb as Willow fight skip, which I'll get to in a minute, but it's dumb. Basically you have to get hit by the hand, then you spell lag so you fall in the air, and when you get hit by something like the hand, for some reason you start falling towards it. Fun game. But you can spell lag again to go through the hand and land in a specific spot. It needs to be clipped in enough to where you're near the wall, but you're not clipped in so far that you're out of bounds or in the wall and you soft lock. So then you get hit by the hand again. You spell lag, which will ledge grab you up. And keep in mind, the amount that you go up is dependent on like when you spell lag. So if you ledge grab too low, the trick's over anyway. So then after that, you have to jump down left, then spell lag at the very end of that, and you'll clip through both walls and end up on the other side at the very end of the level.
Wow, that's that's.
And you may be thinking, like, why does people do it if it's so like dumb? It saves like 2 minutes.
Yep.
It saves 2 minutes and skips the RNG.
It really seems that we don't like Borgin and Bugs in these games because we skip out of it in both Xbox and PlayStation now.
Yeah. Now we skip. What was so funny was when I looked at the recap, and I saw that Molly and Ginny skip was on there, and I'm like, that saves 10 seconds. It's not even huge. It was just 10 seconds because like. I guess if you don't get the save and reload, it saves like 30.
I was going to say, it's 30 to 35, I think, if I remember correctly.
It's 30, 35 without the save and reload. But to get the without the save and reload, it's so angle specific. It's like not happening. So in realistic, it saves like 5, 10. So it was just like, you put that on there, and I'm like... The huge one. I was just like, I laughed, because no one knows. Then there's the lag jump in Leaky Cauldron, which was one of the first things that was found. I would like to point out from what the recap said about what lag jump was, because me and us also literally talked about this before it started. Lag jumps are not just frame perfect; they are angle perfect. Basically, if your direction is not met enough and you even though you hit the frame, it won't work anyway. So it's even worse.
Another reason to hate them.
I think we did say that in the recap.
No, it was a frame perfect trick, and that was it. frame perfect does not describe that trick at all.
Well, the script actually says, I've got the script up. However, there seems to be other factors that play into whether the jump works or not, including the direction you hold, direction you jump, and other factors. So sometimes it's impossible to get a lag jump. Oh, yeah, I guess even if you hit the correct frame does imply it, I guess. But technically, there's like one frame where it would potentially work if you held the right angle, so it is technically correct.
And so let's get out the receipts. We love to see it. Yeah.
But that
is
trick
it.
is awful.
Oh, it's stupid.
Awful.
It saves like 10, 15, not worth. Then you leave Diagon Alley, you go to Willow, and you do the updated Willow skip, where you go down instead of spell lagging through the trigger and just leaving and then saving and reloading. You go down and then you do spell lag to land on top with fixed camera, so therefore you don't have to save and reload after the crawl space. It's slow. Like getting out of the tree area is technically slower, but the save and reload costs so much that it's faster.
Yeah.
And then you go into the next area, and this is my favorite skip in all of like any percent. It's the imp fight skip where you just spell lag and then you just climb up. I love that because I hate that fight. It saves like 30.
It's really
Yes.
interesting because that's the one skip that technically doesn't use any of the new strats because we already knew about skipping that cutscene with lag from the spell menu.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that's only been found now.
Yeah. I'm surprised it wasn't found during like the any percent craze of 2020.
Yeah.
2021. Then we go into the worst fight that will maybe one day be RTA, but it hasn't been RTA yet.
I've done it RTA.
Has it been done in a run?
No, but I've done the skip RTA.
But it's not been done in a run, so I don't care. Is Willow fight skip? What makes it awful is like the blind stuff you have to do, plus the very little out of bounds playing that exists, because you have to be in bounds, but you have to be out of bounds. You have to like walk on this fine line, and it doesn't help that you like can't move the camera at all. It's locked just to look at the Willow, and it's it saves 2 minutes. People want to go for that.
Fun fact though, the rest of that area is still loaded. So what you can do is you can clip out of bounds, and then you can go back to the crawl space where you go at the beginning, and then you can crash the game.
Real quick, I've just checked the doc that I did back in 2021 of all the cutscenes and like possible ways to skip them. And on the doc, there is not the intro cutscene in the Willow level. So evidently, I did not test that. So
Yeah. Okay, Mike definitely knew about it. Mike Katz.
Mike Katz knew a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mike knows a lot about this game.
Okay. Then we go to the any percent no end day skip stuff. I'll touch on them now. There's many cutscene skips that Miney found long time ago that were never used. So some of them were used in Hundo, but most aren't. The ones that are applicable for the run are Night Zero, where you skip Ron's intro to Friend George. Day 1, where you skip the first cutscene, which for some reason both skips the common room cutscene and the Nick cutscene. Like Nick just sits there and just watches me walk past him. Then next one's in Night 2, where you skip the Hermione cutscene, which you also can't do in Hundo, because haha, you need the portrait password and inventory item. And then the very, very, very last. Oh wait, no, Night 4 cutscene multitask. The one that's it. The one that everyone kept saying saved like 1 to 2 seconds, and I timed it and it saved like 20. So I don't know who wrote that number down, but I guess
who could that have been?
I wonder who it could
God,
have been.
who timed that? Ridiculous.
I know, can't believe it.
So bad.
And then the one that's also used in Hundo, but it saves a lot, is the final cutscene. Like the very final common room cutscene. Night 5. Saves 3 minutes. Kind of crazy.
It's really that much, Christ.
It's 3 minutes. It's insane. That cutscene's long.
Oh.
But I'll touch on those, but but they were found way before the category. They just now exist now because of my push to get it to be made a category. But Then we go to the first prominent skip of the run is Expelliarmus skip, which, funnily enough, almost looks like the old GameCube Xbox version of the skip. It's so funny. Where you just go on the left side and then you spell lag through and then you just walk through, fight the gargoyle, and then leave. It's basically the old Expelliarmus skip from GameCube Xbox, but with spell lag, and you have to like wait for a door at the end. But like it takes like 3 minutes.
That's my favorite part of the skip, where you do the entire skip and then you climb up and you just have to wait for a door to close.
It's so sad that the door doesn't open the other way. If it opened the other way, oh, the time save. But then you go into restricted section, and you can just go up. You don't even have to grab Hogwarts of History, by the way. You just go up after you get the ladder, face the Scourge wall, spell lag through. Harry lands in the Scourge wall, so he gets a nice little Scourge bath before he wakes up, and then he just opens the door with Scourge on it. It's funny because like the Scourge in that game is less of like a damage thing and more just a wall. It's just a wall. And once you're in the wall, the game don't know what to do and it just opens the door. It's so funny. And then after you fight Crab and Goyle and you leave and you go into the little puzzle area with the block, like, and then you flip both the levers to open the door. You can just jump on the block and then jump at the door and just clip through the door. So who needs to open that door anyway? That door's for losers. Then you go to Avifors, which, by the way, the original Avifor skip that SLS found, it took me like 2 hours to get it with save states. That was like, it was hard. It was really, really hard, and I don't even know how SLS was able to find that because it was so convoluted of a skip that it like barely worked with save states. It was so dumb. But then when I was doing my attempts, my very first attempt, SLS was like, okay, let me just go find a new Avifor skip real quick, and he found like a really, really easy one. Basically, the door you enter that closes with the bars has like a little circle archway on it that you can like stand on for some reason. And if you angle it, like if you get on it, then you angle yourself so that like you're facing it, but like facing just a little bit to the left. You do a spell lag hold forward, which makes it so you get into a falling animation. Then when Harry starts falling towards the camera, you spell lag hold backwards and he just clips into the wall. And then you just back up a bit and then just jump at the door and you leave the challenge. It makes the challenge it saves like 7 minutes. It's huge.
Great skip.
And I find it easier than the Avifor skip in GameCube and Xbox. Because it's like 2 inputs. It's so funny. Then you go through, and then you go to day 4. There's 2 different versions of Incendio skip.
Yep.
There is the RTA version, and then there's the the one version that maybe one day will be done, but it requires a lag jump, right?
Yes, it requires a lag jump, and also it requires a lag clip that doesn't make any sense, and I still don't really understand it.
Yeah, it's like a lag clip onto. It's like a lag jump. Like you get onto a torch, like the non-RTA version. You like jump on a torch, and then you do a lag jump to the other one, and then you lag clip, and then you land on something on a torch, I think, and then you lag clip again, and then oh look, you're in the spellbook room.
Yeah.
That's the not RTA version. The RTA version is you jump to the stairs that are by the first gargoyle, but it doesn't trigger the first gargoyle. Then you just jump at the door near the gargoyle and you just clip through the door. So we're playing pacifist percent where we just don't want to kill that gargoyle.
There's technically an easier version if anyone's wanting to pick up this run. There's an easier version where you can go into the corridor above where that slope is, and you can do a slope clip down into the corridor, so you don't have to do the jump through the door, which is slightly easier, but obviously slower.
Way slower.
Yeah.
Then After Incendio, it's like the same, and then Forest has like some lag jumps you can do, not RTA viable because lag jumps. Ew. And why would
Yep.
you want to do them like an hour and a half to 2 hours into the run? I couldn't imagine doing it in Leaky Cauldron, let alone Forbidden Forest.
Real quick, just to butt in and ask this, because I'm sure there will be some people wondering what you mean by this. What do you mean when you say not RTA viable?
It will not be done in a RTA setting, and RTA setting means real-time attack, which also means done in a run. Can it be done if I put a save state or make a save in Forest and I try it over and over again? Yes. But do you want to do a frame perfect, angle perfect type trick that would save what? 5 seconds in a run? No. So therefore it's not RTA viable.
Cool.
Alright. Then Forest is basically nothing. Then you go to day 5, which is the technically you can do the staircase clip on every day that you go anywhere past the second floor. So first floor and ground floor. But like ground floor, it only saves 6 seconds, and you have to get it first try. So it's like not truly worth it unless you're really good at the slope clip. But you can try it. But the reason why it's really good on day 5 is there is a cutscene where Hermione really wants to go to the library, you know, and miss the Quidditch match. The nerd she is. But you can make her not go to the library and actually, actually be cool for once and not go to the library by just jumping down the stairs and, just make sure that you don't hit the cutscene on the way down, and you skip it and you just go to Quidditch.
I want to
Saves a
say
minute.
here, Nick so attempted this on his stream today and got it first try. I was genuinely really impressed.
Is that the only trick he did?
Yeah, but it's the only one he not even learned that your
No.
help in
Oh, what?
stream helped him, and he got it first try. So well done, Nixer. Without any real looking into the trick to get it, just based on chat, providing not vague things, but to me, like when you read like instructions on how to do something in a like a text form versus I'm much more of a video like enjoyer. I'm getting that from Nick says offline chat. I'm much more of like a visual learner, that I would need some sort of like visual explainer. So to be able to do that first try, I was quite impressed.
But like the big thing I like to joke about is you go to the Quidditch match. Hermione never has the realization about um you know it being a big snack. Then uh you get the cutscene at the end with Ron where Hermione never showed up, but then we skip the cutscene in common room the next day. So then both Harry and Ron never figure out about pipes. Harry just goes into the bathroom anyway.
And then you never get Hermione recovering because you skip the end cutscene as well. So
Yeah, that whole
like, great.
subplot is just removed from the game. Plus, like Dumbledore being suspended as well, like that's not even a thing. So when he's at the
Gone.
Quidditch final, that just makes normal sense. I love that the change the lore of this game because of the cutscenes we are able to skip. It makes it a very interesting story. Because we skip a lot of stuff. Like we never
We're
even
so
reunite
close
with
to
Molly
being
and
able to
Ginny
skip
either.
all the
We
Petrifying.
we
We're
just
so close to being able to skip all of the petrifying. Because if we could skip that 3-minute cutscene on night 1, then the Snick would have done nothing.
oh god, yeah, that would have been that. I actually was looking into something for that for Hundo, but it ended up going nowhere, and I was really annoyed.
That cutscene, that's a 3, like, it's longer. I think it's longer on that version because they, like, drag it
Oh, it
out.
goes on for hours. It is
It's
ridiculous.
really long
Like,
cutscene.
the GameCube and Xbox version, they, like, somewhat stretch it out, but, like, they start speaking fast. But then, like, on the PS2 version, it's just, like, anything at all?
No,
No.
there isn't
There isn't
anything,
anything, Professor.
Professor.
It's so dumb. They just stretch out every other line.
Like, speed your words up, please. I've got places to be. I've got to go help Neville from behind that tapestry that he could totally
I
get out of
still,
himself.
I still want to know what would happen if you spell clip, using like those stairs or whatever near the tapestry and get on the other side and talk to Neville.
I'm curious. There's already a lot of untapped potential with this run. It's still like I think a lot of the more obvious stuff has been found, but there's still a lot of like potential. I think for this, like it's by no means is it a completely mined category. I don't think. I think there's
It's
still a
not
lot.
done. It's not done, and you want to know why it's not done? How many people have done a run of this category? I can count on my hand. And you know what
One.
I'm You know what I'm doing? One, and it's pointing right at me.
Well, the funny thing, actually, I realized actually while you were talking, is that our listeners who aren't sort of familiar with the community and are just passive listeners to the recap will be very confused what we mean by any percent no end day skip because that wasn't touched on in the recap because the change happened in March. But just to clarify, the no major skips leaderboard was voted to be turned into an any percent no end day skip leaderboard. Essentially, just removing the additional two rule sets that were on the no major skips one, which was cutscene, multitasking, and spell menu lag abuse. Those were the two that
would
got.
would like to say, it's not any percent no end day skip. Even the website doesn't say that. It's any percent Neds.
Nets.
I am forever calling it any percent Neds now, because that's literally what it says on the website.
That's it.
It was abbreviated any percent no end day skip. It was abbreviated,
Oh
so it
no
says any
ads.
percent.
Yeah,
So it says any percent Neds.
no ads. Yeah, that's great. Um, I guess it feels weird to talk about this because it did happen in March, but it feels very relevant because we've got both of you here. Um, without obviously going into too much detail, because I know this was quite a hotly debated topic within the community. Why, in your opinion, was the change of no major skips to any percent no end day skip? Why was it more important to you to have it just be the category got changed rather than adding another category?
I'll let Blaze answer first because I think Blaze is probably more passionate about it than I am.
I'll say it straight up. No major skips, got barely any runs in the last 3 years. Like the only other one that was on console was Flow, and he really only did it for the world record reign, and he wasn't ever gonna run it again. So you can't, you can't like be like, oh, this category has enough differentials to be a category. I agree with that. But if no one was running no major skips in the first place, why does there need to be any percent no end day skip and no major skips when everyone just runs 2 PS2 for any percent? Like it's not even like I am like saying it as like a big thing. I'm saying it's a statistic. You could literally look at the any percent board, see how many any percent runners are on there, and then see how many of them have done any other run of 2 PS2. And it's a pretty slanted statistic.
Yeah, that's fair. SLS,
Does
do
it
you have oh,
does it warrant to have a category? Yes. Do we have the runners to sustain it as a category? No. If we get like 5 runners that are like, oh hey, I want to run no major skips again because any percent Neds is like weird, then okay. But those 5 people don't exist.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Celeste, do you have anything to add to that?
Not really. I mean, I wasn't. I thought it was a cool category to add. I didn't really. Sounds really like in a weird way. I didn't really care if we added a new category or made a category, changed the category, whatever it was. I think for me it sort of comes back to the discussion around sort of what are the leaderboards, and I think people focus too much on sort of a run only being a valid run if it has an SRDC leaderboard. So I think it's that sort of like no one's stopping anyone from playing a category they want to play. If someone wants to go and do glitchless, they can. But it's that sort of what the community thought would be the better third category, I guess, for the game. If like Blaze said, if like 20 million people came out of the woodworks and went, well, we're all going to play glitchless now, which is unlikely to happen, since it hasn't happened for the last 9 years. At that point, maybe there's an argument to be made of like, oh well, maybe we can add a leaderboard, or maybe we can have a discussion around it. But I think looking at what's been discovered, what the quality of the game is, what sort of people seem to be interested in, I think it was the right decision. But again, it doesn't stop people running a game or a category if you want to run the game without using any of the glitches or lag clips, go for it. Like there's nothing stopping people from running things the way they want to run it. It's just you like on a leaderboard, there has to be a certain rule set to have some sort of fairness on that leaderboard. But if you want to go and do, I don't know, if you want to go and do Chungdo low cast with high jump enabled, go for it. I don't think anyone should say like that. Like you're not entitled to run that category. It's just whether it has an SRDC board, but that's not the be all and end all.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And it sort of leads me on to my next question. Obviously, we touched a bit on Insane Percent in the recap. And again, for those who didn't see the recap or have forgotten, an Insane Percent is where you run every category on a game's main leaderboard back to back to back to back. So, for example, one PC, you would run any percent, 100%, all wizard cards, and remind me what the last one is. It's the fourth category on the main board. What is it?
For what game?
One PC. Any percent, 100%.
100%, all wizard cards,
Glitchless.
Glitch. I don't forget glitchless. Yeah.
How did you remember all wizard cards but not glitchless?
Well, it's because it sort of relates to my question. So you would play those categories, but you wouldn't play the ones that were on CE or custom content, such as boostless, 100% glitchless, etc., low cast, high jump, restored, and fixed movement. So I guess my question that I wanted to ask is sort of when adding or considering adding new categories to a main leaderboard, which is different for 2PS2 because it hasn't yet had someone do an Insane Percent run, and probably won't for a long time yet, because my PC is awful. So me and Blaze aren't going to get to do that race anytime soon. But my question is, like, so let's say we look at free PC or wizard cards, which I think was very hyped, and like people were like, we should really add this category. But looking back, the category was added, and 4 people have run it. 2 people sort of ran it. I don't want to say almost for the sake of it, but like Nixo ran it because I requested it originally, and Flo ran it because of world record. He wanted to get world record. I don't even remember if Flo did an all wizard card run or if he just submitted his hundo. I know he did for 2 PS1.
He didn't even do. He originally submitted his hundo war record, which I think someone told him to not do that, so they removed it. And then he literally was just like, okay, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna run hundo, but don't do secrets, and that's it.
Okay. So I guess my question is, because obviously that invalidated about 4 or 5 Insane Percent runs, which looking back, as much as I will say I enjoy People Card and I'm looking forward to doing the run I have requested in my queue, on my own channel, like, sort of tying it back to this idea of adding categories if people aren't really going to run them or there's not much interest, especially when it comes to runs that are affected of it, like Insane Percents. How does that impact on your opinions of stuff like that?
I'm gonna be very real with you. I may be like the only person that thinks this way in this community, which is probably true. I don't think of multi runs when I make decisions.
I'm
Because
I'm I'm actually in the same boat as you, Blaze.
because I like to think of it this way. Single runs are the things that inherently matter the most. And if we're going to throw up a fuss because this one multi run's getting affected, it's just I just find it really weird because at the end of the day, the single run where you do things over and over again are going to be more optimized and, are just there. And multi runs are things that we made up to just have long runs because this community is known for just doing long runs when they're not competitive, but you do them for the sake of the challenge. It's like a challenge run.
Yeah, that's fair. Because Insane Percent is definitely that it's a challenge run like Lowcast. It's a different kind of challenge. But as
It,
someone who has done an Insane Percent in HP3, I can tell you literal blood, sweat, and tears went into that run. Literally. Because I crushed my finger in a fire door mid-run. So yes, literal blood, sweat, and tears by the end of it.
Why were
multi
you
run.
opening a fire door during a run?
Because I ordered a takeaway, went downstairs, well, sort of was about to go downstairs. Bearing in mind this was about when I lived in the hostel, so they had like fire doors and whatnot. I sort of propped the door open with my foot, put my finger like on the door frame. The door ended up going. I didn't quite make the connection, and then it went boom straight onto my finger, which just so happened to be the finger I pressed W with. So for the rest of the all requirements run and the any percent run, I'm like basically going forward with a broken, like not quite broken nail, but like a bleeding nail. It was not fun. And the other annoying thing, my food arrived like less than 30 seconds before I reached the Shrieking Shack cutscene, which was so annoying because if it had arrived just a little bit later, I could have, I could have started that cutscene and then gone downstairs to get it, and I wouldn't have lost as much time as I did, basically. But it did mean that when I came back up, I could actually enjoy some of it because I had a bit of free time. But no, that's I think that's an interesting way to look at things, definitely, and I think that it is definitely I think because a lot of communities don't really have multi runs like we have. Like we are, I feel like kind of a rare community in the sense that we have multiple runs, and I think it's like you say, single runs are kind of the core of this community. Like I don't really know how active multi runs has even been this past couple of months. That's not to say it's dead, but like
Multi runs, by definition, are a challenge run. They aren't challenge runs like, beat this in a little amount of casts, don't jump at all. But they're a challenge in endurance, and that's what they are. And at the end of the day, a 30-hour run, or let's take 2PS2 for example, a 10-hour, because it'd be 10 hours. It'd be close to that because of just how long the loads are. A 10-hour run is not going to be competitive. You're just finishing it for the sake of it being finished, and then maybe you want a PB because, for example, most people do multi runs after like a huge time save gets found because they're like, oh, I just want to update my time because there's like a 10-minute time save. I'm like, okay, go ahead. But like, no one's gonna be like, I'm gonna grind this multi run every day until I get this one specific time.
yeah,
It
that's
just doesn't
fair.
happen.
That's fair. I mean,
But
also there's this weird part for me, at least, about like particularly 6th Gen Trifecta. That it's like it's RTA, whereas like you look at 7PC Trifecta, PC Trifecta, that are all loadless, whereas you've then got 6th Gen Trifecta, which is RTA, which just always. I mean, I know there are reasons behind it, but it's always just very weird to me. But
then
the
there's also the
inconsistency there.
yeah, but it's even like the basic things are like we time like transitions between games, so therefore if you have things set up a certain way, or if you're able to swap games quicker, if you have a certain order of games, you save time just naturally by the fact that you've either opened a game quicker or changed a scene quicker, which seems crazy to me.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean,
It's the sense of you just don't take them seriously. You just do them for the sake of doing them, and that's why they're enjoyable, because you do them for the sake of doing them, not for the sake of the time.
would you say the same thing about character extensions?
Depends on the CE.
Fair enough.
I think it's
CE should 99% of the time should not be taken seriously. Like they're like fun little runs that you do. Like yeah, they have a leaderboard and maybe some of them will be competitive because like Chungus for example is CE, and if I said something like that, then it'd be like, why are you disregarding the category because it's on CE? And I'm like, okay. But like at the end of the day, CE is supposed to be like, I see CE as like a break from main board where it's like, oh, I want to do this fun little run for a little bit and then I'll go back to main board and grind again. It's just a break. It's not to me. I don't see it as like I'm gonna get competitive in all these categories. I see it as, oh, it's just a break from main board.
yeah, I think if it's something you see, like I think as a runner, if you are particularly interested in running something and you're like, oh, this is a really fun category, I'm going to run, like you said, Chungus, all power to you, great, you go for it. It's that sort of question of like, is that if there was, for example, if they changed the rule in Chungus to, I don't know, if they're like, oh, we're going to remove the cutscenes from the file in the game, should that decision then be carried over to normal category? Whereas if you made a decision in normal any percent of like a rule change of like this, like you have to do this frame rate or this thing, would that then be carried over to the category extensions? Like, how connected are they? I guess.
Yeah, that's a fair. I think the connection, in my opinion at least, gets, I don't want to say weaker, but less so. The more down the non-single run line you go, like you start with like to me, like you've got three now. You've got multi runs, you've got category extensions, and then you've got custom content. And I think I guess that connection to me sort of starts strongest at multi runs, then goes down a bit at category extensions, and then drops dramatically by the time you hit custom content, I think. But yeah.
And to be fair, custom content right now is just one PC restore, which has like 4 runs total, and then there's what, bingo, and then which only gets attention when the bingo tournament's going on.
Hey, don't forget about fixed movement.
Oh yeah, sorry, fixed movement, but that also has like 4 runs.
Yeah. It sort of is a good segue, and I realise we are going on for a little bit, which is not a problem unless it's a problem for you guys. But I wanted to sort of bring it round now to the divorce, so to speak. You mentioned about like not thinking of multi runs when making single run decisions, and I guess it kind of ties into the recent split of Xbox and GameCube and PS2. I know one of the concerns that was brought up was that would that mean that you'd have to do both two PS2 any% or 100%, and then two Xbox 100% or any% in a full series run? And I know that you two, I think I should have expected that answer from both of you from before, because both of you were very much like, just because we're splitting the board doesn't mean it has to work this way in full series. I think, I don't quite know where the question line I'm leading here is. I was just thought that was a nice segue into this part of the conversation. But I guess,
I can say why my reasoning was my reasoning.
I thought of the segue, and I was like, I don't know where I'm going with this. I was like, I'm going to move the conversation along, but I don't know how to continue. Yes, go ahead.
Because with like the split, right? Everyone kept bringing up the argument. I was just like, but what about multi-runs? Because I didn't. This isn't the first time I brought this up. This is just the first time that it's actually gone to a vote and it's actually like done something. but I've always brought it up almost every year that like it should just be split off. Like it just like every time I looked at speedrun.com, I was just like, why is there just 2 games on the same board? It was just like there's this thing, but there's this thing, but I can't add this thing because then it will contradict this thing, and it's just like there's 2 100% runs on the board, 2 any percent runs on the board, 2 no major skips runs on the board before like Neds, right? So it's just like 2 things with 2 completely different rules, 2 completely different types of strategies and stuff. And I was just like, what's the point of them being on the same board if the resource and stuff can't be shared? There is no link between them besides the fact that like they look the same. And I was just like, what? And then everyone kept bringing up the multi-run argument. And I'm like, multi-runs are arbitrary anyway. Like, there wasn't no dev that came from the sky and came to our community and was like, you must do these multi-runs this way. Nothing can be different. It has to be this way. It was just like no one said our multi-run should be this way. For all I know, if one person didn't step on a butterfly 10 years ago, right? Maybe we would have had multi-runs where they included the DVD games. Full series included everything, and not just the main series. Maybe Quidditch World Cup would have been part of Octafecta, and it's just like, what? Why are we like trying to make up these things when multi runs are arbitrary anyway?
Yeah.
Just make them how you want.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to look at the history of the SRDC leaderboards, because obviously I was around when they were created. So the 2 6th-gen leaderboard originally started with all 3 consoles being separate completely. So GameCube, Xbox, and PS2 all had their own leaderboard on the same page. And then the decision was made to join GameCube and Xbox together. But at the time it was made, PS2 had 1 run. So there wasn't really a conversation around like, should we have separate leaderboards, because no one was running any of these games. But I think as the categories have evolved, obviously Xbox GameCube got a lot of attention, PS2's massively changed. They're fundamentally different games developed by different development teams. It's not even like the same team made 2 different games. 2 different teams made 2 different games. I think the argument of whether they should be separated or together is sort of quite an easy, in my mind, it's quite an easy argument to sort of get to the conclusion of. I'm one of those weird people who thinks that we probably should run both PS2 and Xbox in full series. Ultimately,
controversial.
I know, right? Me and Flo. I don't really care, because obviously it's a multi-run, it's arbitrary decisions. But I think they're different games. It's same with like 5 GBA, 5DS and stuff. Like technically, they're different enough games designed by different software, have different design philosophies, that they probably should be counted as separate games for full series. But I wouldn't, in my mind, it's not something where I'd be like, I'm gonna then force that on other people, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what games are in full series as long as people are like in agreement about what should be, I guess. So I don't think separating the leaderboard has any impact on what the community decides should be in a multi-run.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think, for me, the argument was always a bit weird anyway, because we have, like you say, the category multi-runs as a whole are so arbitrary anyway, and we are not unknown for basically creating quite arbitrary rules sometimes, looking at you, or was it cards, the no buying rule. So that, like, it's not like I think sometimes people sort of, like Blaze said, sort of seem like there's like this specific like rule, like guidelines we have to follow. It's like, no, we can make these runs what we want them to be, and like if we want to split the boards, it doesn't have to affect the multi runs. And that topic never came up, and I don't think it ever will, because I think the people that run, I think there would be a real disheartenment from people that have ran full series if basically everyone on the board got wiped. But at the same time, like, I think there's a potential merit for including it, but again, those runs in particular feel harsh. Full series is always a weird one to touch, in the sense of it's such a long run, particularly Hundo. That like if you do one, like when free Xbox banned House Point duping, which technically made Nixer's world record at the time invalid, but no one ever like got around to like rejecting it because I think just everyone was kind of like, it's a bit not unfair, but like there was sort of this aspect of, I don't know how you two would describe that.
I think the best way of dealing with that would be to bring in some sort of like penalty or like adding time on the system where it's like, oh, okay, so we've changed. I don't know. Take Insane Percent for example. It's like, oh, so Insane Percent we've added another run to it that's normally about an hour and a half long. So if we add an hour 35, an hour 40 to every run, then we cover that discrepancy, and it means that there's still a bit of time if people want to run. So it's not, you're not just adding world record onto each run. So you're not like completely stripping leaderboards, but at the same time you're acknowledging that the time has changed. I guess especially if you're adding stuff rather than removing stuff.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's what happened with One PC 100% Annual Wizard cards. When the end time got changed, they just added the respective amount of time to the end of each run. So
I just find it interesting. I don't know. I've been slowly pushing into like a thing because I keep thinking that these are all challenge runs and stuff. That sometimes I think that even like full series and stuff don't even need a leaderboard because the sake of them being competitive for a time is non-existent, because the challenge of it is to not get a certain time, but the challenge of it is to just finish.
Interesting.
Yeah,
And
I think
the longer the run goes, the more I agree with that, because like, okay, maybe you can have a run for Octafecta, but is a 17-hour run gonna be Undofecta gonna be competitive? Is a 32-hour run going to be competitive? Is a 60-hour run going to be competitive?
I mean, you say
You just
that,
keep stretching
but
it.
there was a tied world record in PC Artifact 100%, which the fact that that tied, even if it got retimed afterwards not to be tied, was insane. In, like you say, a 17-hour run.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion because ultimately I don't think there's any harm in having certain leaderboards if it's a community decision. But I get the viewpoint of like, should certain things have runs, should certain things just be not on SRDC? But I think ultimately all these things come down to community decisions, and I think that one or two or three or four people can sit there and go, I think this or I think that. But ultimately, if there's a community behind that decision and the decision doesn't impact people, then I don't really mind things being the way they are, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
To
that's
be
fair.
fair, this makes me come to the conclusion that speedrun.com is an awful website.
Yeah.
No, we knew that anyway. I've been working a lot on the HPSR website that I've been working on for the past year now. Actually, the past 15 months, and my dev friend has just really gotten to understand how speedrun.com organizes the leaderboards and the fact that what they call variables and all of that, and he hates it. He officially despises the website and understands now why I want to work on stuff like this, because he sees how shit the website is.
To be fair, like the speedrun.com website before the guy sold it was fine. But then the guy sold it to a company, the company wanted money, and now look what we are.
Yeah, Pack was like actually fairly decent. Obviously, there were issues with like bandwidth and trying to keep the website up when lots of people were on it during GDQ and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But like I think there was like a genuine care about the community. I don't think that's quite there anymore because it's more of a profit money making thing as opposed to a community tool.
If I'm being really honest, like, I follow speedrunner.com on Twitter, and I keep an eye on every post they make, because I'm excited for potential new site updates, because they've recently done the big rewrite on the back end, which basically now means they can make a bunch of changes that people have wanted for ages. But they're constantly now they're throwing out all these tournaments, which I've got to say I have no interest in. Like, I have no interest in this like competitive tournaments. I know obviously it has a market because people are running them and doing it, but like, I'm definitely more interested in like improvements to the site, and specifically for stuff like Locust, which is really annoying for us at the moment because we have to set our because there's no way to count like organize the leaderboard by a numeric like integer besides like time. Um, we can't do low cast in an effective way. Instead, what we have to do is set the amount of casts as the hour, then the hours as the minutes as the seconds, and the seconds as the milliseconds. Yes, if you're confused, don't worry, it confuses a lot of people. But just stuff
then
like
they
that.
And then I remember when we all freaked out because they started adding day counters, which ruined our counter.
Oh yeah, you have to like change your like display settings on speedrun.com now. Because yeah, like you say, it ruins it otherwise, and yeah, it's weird. I'm hopeful that they've been working on some stuff. So I can't remember when the big like overhaul update was, but I feel like it was a while ago now. So I'm hopeful that in the next couple of months we will see another big push update out from them, which will hopefully provide us with some of these features that people have been wanting for a while, which they said they could now deliver to us. Because of the update, which is partly, to be honest, one of the reasons why the board split was kind of deemed necessary was, this thing that we couldn't do things the way we wanted to, and it just makes things messy. Like, way back when, SLS will tell you, the split for GameCube and Xbox versus PS2, and I'm assuming originally GameCube, Xbox, and PS2 all separately, was done using ILs.
Yeah.
Because of the limited capability of the site, which I'm assuming was pre-selling. But that
Yes, that was like back in like 2014, well, not that early.
When did Pax sell the
2015.
website? When did he sell the website?
2019? No, it wasn't that early, was it? But like it was speedrun.com is sort of like a blessing and a curse because it made things so much easier to like find runs and work out things because pre SRDC it was like you'd have to hope you can find the Google sheet or join the Skype group. This was before Discord as well. Like hope there was one on YouTube. You go on SDA, you try and find something. We used to use IRC chats for races and stuff. Or like you'd be like, does anyone know this thing or that thing? And it made like finding runs and stuff so much easier. But at the same time, it limits any sort of creativity towards what you're trying to show, especially early on, because obviously it was a very limited website because it was incredibly early in development. So it was like you had to do things like put different consoles on ILs rather than having them as drop downs because that didn't exist.
Yeah.
Interesting time.
It's definitely really a weird one because it's very much a monopoly in the industry. Like, I don't think there's another speedrunning like website, leaderboard website like that, unless like you've got other games that do have like their communities that have their own leaderboards like off of the site. Which
like you have your Mega Man and like GoldenEye and things have their own separate boards that they've had for millennia.
Yeah. Which I can't blame them for. I guess to sort of.
By the way, it was October 2020 is when it sold.
Oh, thank you for the information. Speaking of things changing hands, I guess what impact do you think that the separation of two PS2 and two Xbox GameCube has had already and will have going forward?
Do you want real answer or hopeful answer?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat.
Hopeful answer, like people will want to pick up the game, they'll see a new game, they'll be like, oh, cool, we can do runs in that now. It'd be cool having new categories, not having to think like, oh, what's the better version to play. Real answer, I don't think anyone's playing habits in the community are going to change. And that's everyone's prerogative to play whatever they want to play. But I don't think it. I think the games are different enough to warrant separate leaderboards. I don't think it's going to change how people view the games.
That's fair.
My what SL said I agree on, but I looked at the question differently, and I was thinking of, since we were able to get a vote going for a split like this, and it actually happened, there may actually be a bigger talking point for 5GBA and 5DS.
Yeah.
Well, that actually was going to be my next question. Do you see 5GBA and 5DS, or even 4GBA and 4DS ever being separate now that this has happened?
If you okay, my perspective is, if you look at it in the sense of, if you look at it in the sense of like, I want to clear up the leaderboard. It's just a thing that you do. Speedrun.com is an awful website. Sure, it's gonna happen, which is what the perspective you should probably look at it in, because splitting leaderboards does not affect multi runs. Changed my mind. But if you look at it from the perspective of, is it really needed? It will never happen, because 4GBA and 5GBA get one run a year.
Yeah, I think if out of the two, I think 5GBA and 5DS would be the one that would be split. I think 4GBA and 4DS are just, there's not really that difference between them that will warrant it, except for a couple of mini games are added in. But I think, like Blaze was saying, ultimately I think it comes down to what the community is thinking and what they find, and that would require people to play 5DS, which does technically have an exclusive skip, because you can skip one of the duels you're meant to do, which you can't do on GBA.
And
But
then you can save corrupt.
yeah, that as well. Ugh, don't remind me. But I think it's, again, it comes down to a community thing, and it's like, you could potentially get a vote out there, but how would people vote? And like, whose votes would you even count in that sort of vote? Because like, would you count the 5DS runners' votes? Because then you're not counting any votes. Or would you like look at like the community votes, what people think? Would you do like it becomes very complicated when it gets to as low a number of runners as those games have.
6th Gen was in a lucky position that we had enough runners that we could make the decision.
Yeah.
Handheld's in an even worse position, and if you were talking about 4GBA and 5DS, it's even worse. It's probably like one runner a year. Like, no one wants to play those games, which I feel bad for. And I feel bad for 5GBA especially, where that whole run only gets talked about because of save corruption.
Yeah, it's definitely like, as much as it's cool to see some of these massive time drops like we were saying earlier, it does feel like sometimes like 2PS2, all you hear about is end skip, 1GBA, wrong warp, like 5GBA, like the safe corrupt, like 1GBC, the A strats, like they kind of become known by these massive time saves, although there's still so much more in these runs. So it's like you say, kind of a shame for that. I guess before we sort of come to the end of the deep dive discussion, do you guys have any more thoughts on the separation? Any other comments that you would want to make about it?
I mean, like I said, I've sort of come to terms with it. I think my parents divorcing is definitely, sad, but I think I'm sort of in a place now where I can comfortably sit here and talk about it on a stream without it being I think it's the best thing for the games, because it allows you to have that sort of freedom over PS2 that you didn't have before, because it became very much like you're having to sort of think about it in context of how it would affect other leaderboards. But best thing for the game, but not going to have an impact really in the long run in terms of people running the game. I think it's just basically the key point of the separation.
As a divorce lawyer, I am so glad that I got paid. I am so glad that I was able to take this this case on because I got paid.
Wait,
So
but my dad said he couldn't give me any pocket money. How are you getting
because
paid?
because he gave it all to me.
What?
Um,
I'm still trying to work out who I am in this situation because obviously my brother's 2 GameCube and my mum and dad are PS2 and Xbox. So like, am I 1 GameCube because I'm technically like an offspring of 2 GameCube? Is that how this works? And I don't
I
know.
don't know.
The analogy sort of falls apart here.
I was going to ask though, which you just reminded me of. What have you got against 2 GameCube?
Oh, he killed my uncle. I don't know.
Who's your
he's-
uncle?
He's missing chess. He has different places for chess. For
It's
Hundo.
true. He has an accessible green dots, and he's constantly hooking up with 2 Game Boy Advance, and I just don't like it.
Oh my god, can you imagine like a reality show for all the Harry Potter games? Kinda need someone to write that as like a skill or something.
I would
write
love
that
a
down.
skit like that.
Write that down.
Write
we
that
we need to
down.
do something with that. I'm literally gonna go to our production Discord server and write that down right now.
Please do.
Because we need to do that.
I will gladly help you work on that.
while we so I write that down, I wanted to touch on this earlier and it felt like something I could bring up just to round off the deep dive discussion. As admins of the 6th Gen community, and it's something we self-talked about a little bit when we were talking about the 6th Gen trifecta. What I guess how do I phrase this question? Why is it beneficial to you as admin slash mods for people to have the loadless timer on their own runs, and why is it, in your opinion, because I'm sure you would both agree, relatively easy to set up despite some people thinking it's hard?
One, I hate retiming runs.
Yeah.
Number one reason. But it's just like, if the thing is there, there is the resource for it. I tell people how easy it is to set up, and I get a lot of pushback that it's like, it's so tedious to set up, and it's just like, you set it up once, you write the numbers down just in case, and you're done. That's it. You know what a mod has to do? They have to pull up your thing. They have to get a reference image just in case your capture is just completely different to the reference image. Then they have to make the thing again. Then they have to sit through your entire run and just time out the thing. And it's just like, you're going through 2 to 3 hours of my computer's time to time loadless of this run, when you could have just set it up and just done it.
Yeah, those 2 hours could have been used mining Bitcoin. I mean, what?
Yeah, true.
No,
It's the thing of like, I know it's hard to set up at first, but once you set it up, it's done.
I think
And
that
it's good because you can compare against your loadless time too.
no, I think there's like I think first of all, massive props to Flo who has done most of the retiming when runs come in. So props to Flo. But I think there's a real fundamental difference between people who are like having issues with it, which is valid. Like if there's issues with it, like not detecting things properly, because I know there's an issue with it not working with certain versions of OBS. Although I think that's been fixed potentially. Like that's very different to like the sort of like I can't be bothered to set it up attitude. It's like I have sympathy more for people who are like, look, I've sat there for an hour. I don't understand it. Can you talk me through it? I've done a run without it, but can you talk me through how to set this up? I'm like, great, cool, yeah, sure, I'll do that.
Yeah, I
But it's
agree.
when people do this like, oh, but like I just can't you just retime it for? It's such a hassle to have to get it up. It's like, okay, no.
Can you just retime it for me? It's just like,
And like we're fairly
the
lenient
point.
with sort of letting people sort of get in 1 or 2 runs without it.
Honestly, if because I've had to deal with this in so many communities that I run now, in the Benny community especially, because we had to make a live split requirement that was really dumb. But like, if you guys are lucky, because if I had the same reasoning like 3 years ago, I would have made it so if you don't have a loadless timer, it's RTA.
fair.
I mean, I've literally had to retime runs that this was back when we actually changed over to loadless from RTA. I had to retime runs that were literally like a camera pointing at a TV halfway across a room at an angle with the brightness turned up to 100 million. So like I don't. It's better now to retime, but it's still so because you can't just like rush through a run and like just get the loading screen. You have to like play the entire video. It just takes so long. It's ridiculous.
What do you say to people that? Not that I'm saying anyone has said this. 'Cause I like to think no one has. But what would you say to people that say that's kind of your responsibility though as a mod to be
It's not.
doing that?
It's also your responsibility to set up the timer.
It's
If you want to run the game, then run the game properly.
you are free to run the game how you want to. There are rules on the SRDC leaderboards because there has to be. If you don't want to follow those rules, then that's your decision of how to run the game, but that shouldn't then impact on other like I said, there's a real difference between like not following the rules because you're actively trying but you just can't get something to work or something's not happening or whatever, and not following the rules just because you'll go, oh well, someone else will deal with that. Because ultimately at that point I could just be like, oh I've done a run of 1 GBA, any percent. Here's a 12.5 hour stream. It's in there somewhere, find it. Oh, that's a mod's job. Like that people would argue would be ridiculous. But then why would that be ridiculous and the idea of timing a run not be ridiculous?
And it's
Like-
also it's just also the thing of like 6-gen runs are really long. It's not like these runs are like 30 minutes. Like like even our 40-minute 2PS2 run is like 30 minutes of loads.
Yeah, that's fair. So I guess your like concise message to people that are unsure. I guess your message to people that are unsure about setting up the loadless timer for their first time.
There is a channel in Discord. Come and talk to us. There are many helpful people who are more than happy to help.
If you have the logic that SLS said that other people will deal with it and it's our job, you're a poo-poo head.
Ultimately, mods and admin in the community are willing to help you if you're willing to also like be open and receptive and helpful. If you have the attitude of, oh well, someone else can deal with this, so it's fine, we're not going to want to retime it because there's no relationship built there. You're basically just sort of like ignoring what everyone else is saying, just going, well, I don't really care, which doesn't put you in the best light in our eyes. Whereas if you're like, I'm really sorry, for some reason on this run the timer didn't work. I'm so sorry. Is there any way you could time it? We're more inclined to be like, actually, do you know what? That's fine. But there has to be some sort of like mutual respect in there.
Especially now, because like 3 years ago, because I used to have timer problems, that was when the timer was like barely developed. It like barely existed. I think I was around during the loadless transition. But now it's a lot better of a tool than it was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, having recently seen some of the discussion and the work that went into like turning the 6-gen boards into loadless and retiming all of the existing runs, and obviously because that was a process that took a couple of weeks, if not months, I'm not entirely sure how long exactly it took. More runs just kept getting added, I'm sure. So I have sort of seen and appreciate. Especially from like I remember Jesse actually ended up getting added as a mod. When there was I think there was 3 runs in the queue, which might not sound like a lot, but when they're 6-gen runs, which I think they were all HP3, if I'm not mistaken. Which actually no, I think there was 2 HP3 and 1 HP2. Maybe I want to say.
Because they're testing my memory now, I don't remember.
I remember this because I was the big proponent of getting him added because I was like, I gotta retime some stuff. Hey Jesse, can you help me retime some stuff? And then once he did that, I was like, hey, can we add Jesse as a mod? And they're like, okay.
Yep, Jesse. As someone who I can say in our little 6-gen group, yeah, I remember that day when you're like, I need help. Can someone help me? and Jesse was amazing. I tried to help, but I didn't set the ledger's timer up right. But Blaze helped me set up the 1/6 Gen one, and we also did it for 2. But again, my emulator just was awful. So
You still haven't PB'd in 1/6, by the way.
I know.
When am I getting the Miney stream and I open the stream and I see the MineyCart playing 1/6 gen for a PB? You did one run and it was like 40 minutes off your PB.
Yeah, to be fair, that run was a complete D-Rust run, and I also started that run at 2 a.m. in the morning, not realizing what time it was.
And to
So-
be fair, it made you realize that flying skip was free.
Oh my god, that skip is so free. Like, if you're worried about going for that skip, don't. It's so fucking free. Anyway, we've chatted on for long enough, so let's bring this round now to the highlight of the month. And again, if this is your first recap rewind, to close out every episode, each person on the team, on the call, picks out a highlight of the month, be it something big, something small, or something personal in the world of Harry Potter speedrunning. And as tradition dictates, guests go first. So, SLS, as our host, will start with you. What is your highlight of the month?
I'll go. I'm gonna go with 2, and they're personal for different reasons. So the first one is the new 2 Xbox skip in Borgin and Burks, purely because it's something that I have theorized for years and have known about the clips, known about everything, and the fact it now is a thing that exists and saves time is really cool, and it's like a nice little close on that chapter of my life. The other thing is not really to do with what was found, but I think with the whole 2P, I think sometimes when you are in a community for so long, because I'm coming up to like 10 years in the community now, I think sometimes you can feel like you're sort of past your point of usefulness in a community. And you can sort of feel like you get to a point where a lot of younger people come in and they find new stuff and then they sort of run away with the categories. But I think with the whole hi Blaze, but with the whole 2 PS2 thing, I think it's sort of proven to me that I still can sort of this is gonna sound very, very like sad and sort of lonely. I can still have a use in the community beyond just sort of being a person there. I can still find stuff and I can still sort of think about ways of improving categories and improving runs. And I think it's nice that even after all this time, that ability is still there, and I can acknowledge that in myself, and I can acknowledge that other people are like, "Oh, that's a cool thing you found." I'm like, it feels really good. So it's just not really something to do with like the actual things that were found this month, but more sort of like how it sort of made me feel within the community.
Yeah, that's fair. I think technically this happened after you found that skip or perfected it, but do you think I feel it feels weird to say you losing, but like your last world record that you had in the community being taken, do you think that in some what I'm trying to say is, do you think you being able to find that skip or did that impact you at all, I guess, the world record stuff in how this felt to you?
I think I've talked about this in who was it in Flowstream or something. I don't really view the world records in a game as like the end point. I think there's so much that goes into runs and categories, and there's so many runs that I've done that have technically been world record but haven't been good runs. It's just by the process of the fact that no one else runs the game. I think that it's really cool to see the games progress, and whether that's because I get a run because someone else gets a run, it's just cool to see those times go down and new stuff be found. Like, yes, obviously I'd be lying if I was like it's like I'm really happy that my world records were taken, because obviously there is some sort of feeling of like, oh, like that it's sad that run is no longer the top run, but there's never been a run where I've been so attached to it where like I'm really sad that it's even 3 GBA 80% when that got me to my flow. That's not a run I was overly attached to the point where other people would say that's such a good run. I'd be like, it's not really, it's just very lucky. So I don't I think that I take more pleasure from sort of advancing the games as opposed to getting world records.
That's fair. But I mean, like you say, like I think this is the first time. Did you end up looking back and working out when the last time you had no world records was?
I think it was because I think that with the fact that no one else runs anything, I think it was literally in 2014 was the last time I had no world records before I did like 3 GBA, New Game Plus, and 2 PS2 any%. So that would be what, December 2014 would be the last time I
So
had no world records.
basically 9.5 years, sort of, a bit under
Yeah.
that, but that in itself to me is insane. And I think that's a massive achievement. I know you say you don't really see world records as the end point, but I still think that's something that's worth calling out and highlighting because that's incredible to me. That even if you're just sitting there with one world record, the fact that for 14 years?
Oh my goodness.
For
I'm not
nine
that
and a
old.
half years, you've not had less than one world record. And I think for majority of that, you've had at least like 2 or 3, haven't you?
Yeah, I think I'd have to actually sit and work it out, but a lot of the earlier years I had a lot because obviously no one ran any of the games other than the trifecta. But I think it would be sort of in the last couple of years I've been sitting on like 1, 2, 3. I was on a lot, and then Cosmic obviously took 1 GBA. Flow did a lot of GBA stuff. 6th gen, two Xbox I haven't had since like 2020, I don't think. But yeah, it's crazy to think that actually I'm now at a point where I'm not like I have no world records, and it actually hasn't like I haven't had any thought where I've sat down and been like, now I'm going to be really sad. Like I think it's just really cool to see even 1 GBA going down by 0.2 seconds. It's just really cool to see.
Yeah, that is cool. And there is an insane thing that happened in that, but we'll be talking about that next month. So no spoilers here. Blaze, what is your highlight of the month?
1, SLS took my answer. But 2, since SLS took my answer, I really want to bring this up because he deserves attention for what he did, especially for the category that he got world record in. And if it wasn't obvious, it's human getting to PC any percent. And I was really close to him when he was grinding for that. He grinded for a long time for that. It was like 6 to 10 hour sessions. And I know how he feels because fun fact if anyone doesn't know, me and Human were both born in 2005. We're both 18. I'm 19 now, but he turns 19 in December. Like I didn't know the connection that we had because we got along really well because we were strat hunters and we grinded a lot. But I didn't know how close he was in age until he admitted it, and I was like, "Whoa!" It blew my mind. And I watched him as he grinded for 2 PC and it like destroyed him because he would always get runs and then he would just get so many fake inputs and then this one thing would happen and then the whole run's dead or like this one Quidditch match would be so bad and it would just end the whole run and it was so sad to watch because he wanted to get it in January and he couldn't but he got it in February and he still says this run is bad which hey me and Human I'll probably agree. It wasn't what he wanted because he wanted to get like a 4x because that's what he was capable of. He's probably capable of more than that. He could probably get a 3x if I'm being real. He just underestimates himself a lot. But for him to get it at all is pretty huge, and it shows that um even games that are like 2PC, which even though I don't particularly like them, and I speak about that a lot, can still go down and can still go down by different people because this is the first time Human has had a main board war record and it was really huge because of course he's had Chungus and New Game Plus and so on like he had the skill in the later parts of the game. But to have a main board war record, especially the one that when you click on Chamber of Secrets, it just shows up and you can see his name, is really cool because he especially does not get the attention for the grinding that he does, the strat hunting that he does. Like he is, I can't even like imagine. He does not give himself enough credit for how good he is of a strat hunter. He is just looking in a game that has been so tapped out of potential. Like imagine if you looked into any other game, it'd be broken.
I will agree that human as like a strat hunter is insane. He keeps coming out with these I say micro time saves in the sense that they save like 0.2 seconds or like 1 second or whatever. But the fact that he's still finding stuff in, like you say, a game that has been mined, like I think the first 2 PC any percent run was done in like July or maybe like something. It was in 2006, wasn't it? I believe.
The first
Um,
segmented was 2006. Yeah,
yeah.
I can get the actual date up.
But the fact that like this run that's been grinded for like what 18 or so years now, the fact that he's still able to find time saves in an any percent setting as well. Like it'd be, it would be makes sense if you find stuff in stuff like boostlers, chungers, because they're still new ish. But like to still find stuff in any percent honestly is insane. And I do think that human is someone who I have a lot of respect for from in a strat hunting sense of, like you say, he does so much. And also I think it's really cool personally to sort of, when you see that leaderboard and you see that top runner and you see the name and you see the flag. Because personally, to me, I don't know about you guys, but there's something I find quite cool about having a Pakistani runner being the top of probably the most popular game in the series. Like, I think it shows the true level of inclusivity, but also the reach of these games. And I think it really shows, how much we welcome anyone to this community, as long as you're not a transphobe, bigot, whatever, etc., etc. But the point stands that I think that I find that personally really cool to see that in particular. But also, like you say, the world record may have only gone down by a second, but the fact that it has gone down is insane, and that definitely deserves to be commended. So, huge props to Human, aka Bill, for that. Did you manage to find the date, SLS?
I did. It was the first segmented was 2nd of Jan 2006.
That was it. I remember because HP1 is July 2005, I believe.
Yes,
And then,
31st of July. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Harry's birthday, which is quite cool. And then HP2 was January 2006.
As we say this, by the way, Human is literally like typing about stuff he's found. Whenever he's talking about how he just skips sludge grabs and stuff, he's literally glitch hunting right now.
Yeah, this he's insane and deserves a lot of respect. And yeah, for reference, his most recent post in the 2PC channel is, surely this saves frames, right? Like, it's the fact that he's finding all these optimizations is kind of insane.
I really want him to get into a non-PC trifecta game, because he did get into 4, and you saw what he did to 4. It was insane.
If he'd have been,
Like,
I would have loved to have seen him play in the tournament. Honestly, I think that would have been so cool to see. Because I think he ended up being quite low seeded in the tournament when he was still a part of it, but he definitely, that seed is definitely not respective of his position and his ability.
I really hope one day he goes out of trifecta, and I don't even care what game it is. He goes out of trifecta and just picks a game. Imagine what that game would be like. Oh,
Yeah. Very interesting sound you just made. My highlight of the month is it's gotta be, and I think purely because of Pax's brilliantness of his letter, would be the HP1 VIX movement, Nixo taking the world record. Purely just because of all the memes and everything that it spawned. Like, Pax approached me back when it happened, and he said, like, can I write, like, I've got this silly idea, can I write this letter and, sort of have it in the recap? And I'm like, yeah, go for it. I love it. And then it came to Nikki, our head writer, and Nikki was like, I love it, and Nikki expanded on it, and then SLS, like we said, he got the script, and then he did the little bit of singing, which again I found insane because this man was ill. He was recovering from a lost voice when he recorded the recap, which you can probably hear a little bit in compared to how he sounds in this recap rewind episode. But that joke and that bit really sort of expanded more and more as more people came on board and got involved. And I love what it kind of became. And I think, if anything, it kind of symbolizes to me one of the reasons why I'm so proud of this month's recap, is that it seems to have struck the perfect balance between Mimi sort of skip bits with like the Wild Wild West bit, the divorce joke, and also the as we just said, the Pax letter bit with informative stuff that people find useful, like the all the other sections of the recap. And I think, like, it's not without saying, this month's recap has been the best performing recap we've ever had. Like, I'm just pulling up the stats now. It's mad. You gonna say something, Blaze?
I was going to say that the jokes itself makes the recap memorable as well.
Yeah. I mean, so the recap at the moment, at the time of recording, is on 183 views. If I look at like that versus the normality, so to speak, of the recap, once it loads up, normally within this period, episodes or videos on the channel get 40 to 100 views. It now has 183 in just over a week.
Yeah, it's currently the third most popular video on the channel.
That is insane. Like the October episode, which is the most viewed video on the channel, which I think is followed by August, and then because August I sort of attribute to being Nixo, but October, Finn's episode did really well, and SLS's episode too did really well. I'm trying to work out what was so good about it, but I think, like Blaze said, is that it's memorable because there's the funny stuff in there, but there's also the serious stuff, and it sort of sits nicely. My sort of goal for recaps going forward is like 10 to 15 minutes ish. Like, I don't want to go too far over that, purely for my sake, for post-production, and also for Winter's sake, also with post-production and with the subtitling. Like, we both do not want to be, like, doing intense stuff on a 25, 30-minute video. No, I don't want to edit a 25-minute video. But, like, I think I really love that, and it was, for me, like, so I think that was the third skit bit, wasn't it, in the recap? Because you started with Wild Wild West, then you had the divorce, then you had this. And I think it just works really well. And seeing Nix's reaction to it too was really cool. And I enjoyed it because Nixo is like not, I don't think he's genuinely fed up, but he seems quite fed up with, like, why is he getting, like, blamed for this? like he blames the wheel and all of this. And I just love the sort of memes that have sprung up around it. And I'm definitely interested to hear more of his response to that in the future, because I think that was really cool. But what I will say is there's a couple of things that are sort of in the works, obviously, with the recap. Like, as we mentioned earlier, that we've brought on some new people to the team. SLS is now on board as a writer after he did a whole bunch of brilliant sort of tweaks and changes to the script for this month, which I should say most of the core script was still written by Nikki, but SLS just came in and made a few little tweaks. I think more sort of adjusted it to your cadence a lot, so to speak.
Yeah, it was more just sort of shifting words around in sentences rather than like rewriting entire paragraphs. It was just sort of like, rather than saying like, well, for one, not saying like as many times as I'm saying now, rather than being like, I can't even think of what I can get the script up. Let me get the script up. It's probably an easy way of doing this. Where are we?
Yeah.
So rather than saying something like, we move on to a game I don't think. So the line that was written was, we move on to a game I don't think expected to be featured in a recap. But it was just like adding a couple of words, like, we move on to a game I don't think anyone expected to be featured again in this soon in a recap. However, this time it's in the company of its. So it's just like adding those few little words, just give it that sort of like, it sounds nicer when it hits the ear.
Yeah, definitely.
But
And I think
but the basic script was all really solid under there.
yeah, and I know that Nikki immediately when we were talking when the recap first came out, he's like, I'm thinking about us asking SLS to be involved because he did great. And I'm so glad you said yes, because I think your expertise and your knowledge in the, for want of a better expression, the production world, so to speak, will be really invaluable. And I'm looking forward to working with you on this project.
I'm excited to do 1 month and then run away.
Please don't. Right. But yeah, as I said, there are going to be some like slight tweaks. There has been some feedback, which again, as I said, this is sort of, I always wanted this to also be a bit of an editorial podcast. We've had obviously a lot of feedback over the past couple of months about stuff that really shouldn't have been missed, that has been missed. So we're going to be looking at sort of shifting some of the focuses of the recap, and also looking at like covering more of non like world record stuff, because I think a lot of the recap is world records of strat finds, but not so much Paul's been doing this Omega glitchless grind, which isn't a world record, so it doesn't really fall under any of my usual radar in the sense of how I usually make notes for the recap, but it's still worth talking about. For example, like the strat that SLS found, like he was talking about earlier, that honestly, it's one of those things that I was there when it was found. It's like, how did that end up getting missed? So the whole thing with informers really is making sure that stuff like that doesn't get missed. And now if it does get missed, I can just blame them. I mean, what? No, but it's about helping to ensure that doesn't get missed and making the recap better and better, because honestly at this point, like, the recap team, the update team, is getting bigger than Potifon organization. Like, I'm looking quite a lot at the two comparatively, I have to say, as sort of external from the community but not external, if that makes any sense. Like, they're kind of similar in that sense, and now updates is becoming way bigger, which I don't think is a bad thing. And if anything, I think more support on it helps, definitely. But yeah. Anywho, we're going to bring this to a close now because we've been rambling on for quite a while, but I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode of Recap Rewind. As ever, there will be another episode next month, with
Next week.
Okay. Weekly recaps, let's go.
Oh god, no.
This week nothing happened.
Nothing happened.
Yeah, that's it.
Hey,
Bye.
I would be mad because something's happening in 4 days.
I was gonna like lightly tease, but you will be seeing more on the updates channel very, very soon. So don't do change your sets for a bit. But yeah, something may be happening later this week. Bring your beans, that's what I'm gonna say. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, everybody, and we will see you all soon. Goodbye.